Hello everyone, and welcome to this session where I will try to set up TypeScript and Jest and write a couple of very simple tests just to get you through the process. First of all, I'm also going to be a bit slower to show my overall process. For example, you can see here I changed directory into code where I keep all my code. In here, I have organized so my GitHub account is named Marcus Redell, so then anything that I use from my personal GitHub is here. If I use something from Salt Stockholm, I have another folder for that GitHub from that GitHub organization. So I use the GitHub organization or profile name as the parent folder. So let's go in here and let's create a new folder and then lab pre-course TDD, let's say. And let's go into that lab pre-course TDD. Here we are. Okay, so if I open up code, I can see there's no files at all. And there's a pretty long series of steps that I need to go through, but I want to decompose everything into smaller steps. First of all, let me just add a README and push it up to GitHub so I have everything in order. lab-precourse-tdd. So I have a README file. I've added something, and if you don't know how to use the terminal, please use the terminal. If you're comfortable with that, you can use VS Code. I just don't want to confuse you, so I'm gonna use the terminal. So first of all, I need to initialize Git. That will create a .git folder with all the information. If I delete that, I no longer have a coupling to Git. Also, I'm using warp as the terminal, and it gives me this nice prompt where I can see that I'm on the main branch and that I'm using Git, and there's one file change since I last committed. So git add dot git commit. When it comes to messages and how you write your messages, sometimes it matters a lot depending on the team you work with in real life. For this project, it doesn't really matter that much. So then I don't waste too much time and effort on the messages itself. I just think about like, what did I actually do? Well, I created a README and added a title. Create README with title. And then if I do git push, it fails because I'm using Git locally, but I don't have anything set up remotely on GitHub. So let's do that. I'm using GH, which is you can search for GH CLI and how to install it, set things up, and then it should work for you as well. And then you should be able to open up a new terminal, type GH, and get some help information on how to use it. We're going to use it for repo create, as we see here. Hit enter, create a new repository on GitHub from scratch. Yes. Repository name, what was it? Lab-precourse, I hope. And I want to create it on my own profile. And I usually have everything in public, because then people can see that I actively code on these laboratory projects. Would you like to add a README file? No, because I already have it. Don't add anything at all. This will create as a public repository. Continue. Yes. Clone the new repository locally. No. Okay, I have no clue now if it's actually able to push. I don't think so because of the default. So now it created the repo online. Let's go to github.com, Microsoft lab dash pre-course dash TDD. TDD as in test-driven development. And here it is. Push existing repository from the command line. If you do this, please just use the website and create a repo that way. Way simpler. I think it would have been simpler if I created the repository with gh without the README first. Then I could clone it down. Okay, so now we see that we've added a remote that we call origin. That's the name we decided. It's just convention. This is the link to where our repository on GitHub exists. And then we say that the main branch that we're going to use is called main, and that we want to push to origin main, meaning this link here and the main branch on that link, and that u will set the upstream target, it's called. Basically, it will save this information. So next time I make a commit, I can just do git push, and it will know that it should use this link here named origin, and then it should use the main branch on GitHub as well. Okay, lots of information. Let's stay on target. That's the first commit that we made. And with all the talking, without the talking, it's just a few seconds, then a commit. So let's set up some goals here that I want to install TypeScript. I want to set up TypeScript, install Jest, set up Jest, create first test, create first meaningful test, second test. Good. Bye. Yeah, I think this will do. I might come up with other steps. I might change my plan, but this is the overall plan I'm going with. Okay. Set up checklist. And now I'm using VS Code here instead. And what I did is write a message, hit Command Enter, and then push it, and then I'm done. So that goes a little bit faster. If you're not comfortable using the terminal though, please stick with the terminal. So first of all, we're gonna install TypeScript. Okay, so to do that, I first need to do a step that I forgot to add, and that's init -y or --yes. It means the same thing. It creates this package.json file with some defaults. Usually I change this to MIT. We will not go into licenses though. So and this description looks awful. Let's remove that. I don't have any test script yet. Remove that. I don't have any main set. Just remove that. Yeah, that'll be fine. Initialize npm, and that's another commit. So notice the size of my commits. As soon as I have something of value that's stable, I tend to commit it. And that also means that I waste a lot less time figuring out the commit messages. Right? So let's go back to README. So now I want to install TypeScript. I can do npm install or npm I. And TypeScript is a development dependency. read up on it if you need to. You can also do save dev. It's the same thing as uppercase D. And just write TypeScript and accept that. So that means that I have it installed. But how do I actually know that I have it installed? Well, I can see it by looking here in node modules that I have TypeScript. I also have something called .bin with something called TSC inside of it. We can even run that thing. TSC. And we get some output from TypeScript or the TypeScript compiler, TSC. Okay, so it's installed successfully. I can see that. Good. Then I want to make a commit. Wait a minute. If I make a commit now, I can see that it would add 121 files. I don't think that's a good idea. Let's actually do a git ignore and add node modules. And you don't need to add the slash. I do it because I want to see that I'm ignoring a folder. Okay, so now if we go back, you see that I have 3 files that I have changes in. Package.json. We have added the dev dependency TypeScript version 5.4.5, and then we have package log file. That's a bit larger. It's automatically generated. It's used to pin the version more exactly than what's done in package.json. We will not. You can read up on it by yourself if you need to. And then the git ignore file. Everything looks fine. But notice that I go through the files and take a peek at them before making the commit. Install TypeScript. Okay. Oh, and formally I should have made a cross here. I think, does it preview the right way? No, it doesn't. Okay. Never mind. That's not a focus. I messed up the markdown, but it will do for now. Let's put a cross on it, and then let's go to setup TypeScript. So we want to use that TypeScript binary and initialize a TypeScript config file. So I can use /node modules .bin tc and then do -- init. But what's more common is, because that's a bit messy, we have something called npx that does that for you. And then I use tc init. I have some autocompletes from what I've done before. I just don't want to confuse you, so let's go with this command. And it's pretty standard that either you have, when you need to configure things, that you have -- or the name of the binary you're running and no -- just, for example, tsc init could have been an option instead. But usually it's -- init. Okay, so it says created a new tsconfig.json file. Inside of here, if I go back here, you saw that the CLI the auto-completed command says out there /dist root there /src. We're gonna fix that inside of this config file that got created. So I'm going to search for root dir as in directory. And this is where it will look for all of your source code. And we usually use src as by convention. You can use something else, but please don't. That will just confuse people. And then we have the out there. By convention, it's usually called dist, sometimes build or something else. But the main convention is dist, so stick with that. And then with that configured, should be able to use the TypeScript compiler. And for now, let's do tsc as a build, actually, let's call it build. That's also by convention. And then we want to run tsc, which will then find that config file and try to compile our code. Let's see what happens when we use npm run. What was that command again? I don't remember. Oh yeah, it was called build. Okay, so it's running TSC. No inputs were found in the config file. Specified paths were this, and then exclude paths were that one. Okay, not the best message, but at least it's finding the config file. But if I remember correctly, we said that we're going to use a src folder. So let's try to add an index.ts file here and just log out hi. Okay, let's try to run it again. What I expect now is that when I go back, I will find a dist folder built that I can run with Node. Here we can see it. And if I look at it, it's basically the same code, but use strict added, because we're not really using anything fancy TypeScript stuff. Okay, but main thing is it will strip away all the TypeScript stuff and generate a little bit different code in JavaScript. So that should then be runnable by typing node dist index.js, and we get the output of hi. Perfect, just what I wanted. So, oh, I have an unsaved file. Let me fix that. Good. And if I'm actually done with this, I can put a cross on that already. So all the files are saved. Good. 5 changed files. What did I do? I added the build script. I updated the list of things I've done. I set up this TypeScript config. Oh, but this is a generated file. I don't actually want this. This one I do want. So it's actually good that I checked those, because otherwise I would have committed the dist folder altogether, and that will just like blow it up and change all of the time. I will not go in much details of why we don't want the things that we don't want. For now, just deal with it, and if you have questions, ask. Okay, so now we have git ignore. This is the same as before, same here, same here. Okay, so what did we actually do? We did a setup TypeScript. Okay. And the more you code, the harder it gets to make up that commit message. So let's stick with small steps. Install Jest. I'll just put an X so I don't forget it, because after this we should be done with it. Okay, so installing TypeScript, then that's something that we don't use at runtime, only when we develop. So it's a developer development dependency that called Jest. And this time we're using Jest that doesn't come with TypeScript types baked in. So to use Jest properly in TypeScript, I need to also include types/Jest. And since Jest runs our tests in a specific way, we're not using Node directly. We're going through Jest as our runtime, our engine that runs our code. And even if we include the types for TypeScript, Jest itself doesn't know how to run TypeScript at runtime. And we don't want to keep on like doing the build script and then running running Jest against the build code. We want to have an awesome developer experience where we can just write TypeScript code and save the files, and then just automatically restarts and runs for us. I'll show you what I mean. But for that, we will need TS Jest. Okay, and that will take a short amount of time. Here we are. And again, since this is a new tool, we usually need to configure it, but I'll do that in another step. So now I just want to go back look at the changes, I can see package JSON, like now it's adding a bunch of stuff. And it's locking all the specific versions for all of the dependencies of Jest. Here though, I just specified the versions of the direct dependencies that I'm using. And then we had the check mark. So install Jest. Now we're starting with the setup. To set it up, we use npx ts jest. And you can see in my autocomplete that it's config : init, and that's the right one. But I said by convention that it's usually -- init. And if I do that, you can see here that it outputs some basic information because you used the wrong command. Config init creates initial Jest configuration. So then even if you remember the wrong or don't remember the command, you can just try it out and or just write ts-jest and you get that information, and then you can find how to initialize it. So now it created some kind of configuration here where it says that preset ts-jest test environment node. We'll stick with that. If that works, we should be able to add a test script called Jest. And again, npm run, oh, I forgot. Here I can see all the commands. It was test. Also, you can run it the same way with npm test without run, or even npm t, because it's one of those commands that are highly supported by default in npm. No tests found. That's such a good clue on what I need to do next. But still, everything is working. It's running properly. I can see that. So let's make a commit. And everything looks to be in order. Set up Jest. Create first test, but it's not the first meaningful test we're going for here. Okay, what's the first test and why isn't it meaningful? So first of all, I'm setting up a bunch of stuff, and the same thing as we did here with console log is not really meaningful. It's just to have something to run TypeScript on, to see that we have the dist folder and we set up git ignore. So the same thing with the first test here. Index.test.ts. The first test, first of all, I usually start with a failing test and then change it to a passing test and then create the meaningful test. So let's do that. Test, it takes 2 arguments. If you see on the string highlighted in blue, it says here it takes a name of type string, meaning something like this. And for now, you can just call it anything at all. So let's actually do that. You don't need to spend time figuring out the right name right now. And of course, the best minimal name could even be an empty string if you want to, or ABC, or it works. Okay. So here we're using an assertion called expect, and then usually you go with 1. I don't use to be. I will not go into details here on why, but to equal is generally safer for me. So to equal, expect 1 to equal 0, but that will not work. Yeah, because I want the test to fail the first time to see how it fails. Otherwise, I might get an indication that everything works properly, but it might work for the wrong reason. So first, we always want to see that it fails the right way. npm t. And here we see expected 0, received 1. That's exactly what I wanted. But I don't want to do up arrow enter each time I change things. So I'm actually going to do up arrow and double dash, watch. You do a first, the first double dash here means that anything after this, you send it to the next command, because npm is the main command you're using. It's the application you're using in your terminal. And the first double dash means stop looking at whatever comes after this, and it will forward it to TS Jest instead. So this one here goes to TS Jest instead of npm itself. And dash dash watch means that we're in watch mode. There's a bunch of information here that you can press A to rerun all the tests if you want to. But the main reason why we want it is, let me close that one, is that now if I save it, it just automatically reruns. So you can have that fast feedback cycle that we want, usually when we develop. So now I have it works, expect 1 to equal 1. Nice. We have created the first test. Create first test. Push that. Okay. And now if we're gonna make something up, if this is the first time you try to do something with tests and follow a TDD process, first of all, you kind of started already. The main thing for me is that you try to specify the behavior of your application. What's your solution? Have a thought, have a clear intent before you actually start the program. And we already started to do that here. This is kind of like our test list here. We just needed to test it manually. Now we added something where we can start to do automatic tests that runs for us and checks for us each time we change something to make sure that everything is still as it should be. So the main thing you want to do here is to start to think about some kind of test list. So let's just make an area inside of this file here. And I'm getting a bunch of AI autocomplete I don't want. So let's say we're gonna do a maths calculator, and because first of all, I'm going with a simple calculator because then I don't really need to do any fancy programming. So I'm just practicing testing. I'm not practicing writing actual meaningful code. So first of all, the simplest test, where do I start? And for me, I think the simplest test here would be 1 plus 2 equals 3. Some other candidates that might be meaningful would be 1 plus 1 equals 2. This one is not as simple in a testing environment because this number and this number, you could by mistake make an implementation where you just use the first one 2 times and the second one you disregard and still get the right output. And then of course, the thing we tend to forget, 0 plus 0 equals 0. That one for addition is pretty simple because you've learned about zeros, but zeros can be a bit tricky to, and usually outside of a math calculator, this can be an empty object, empty array, empty something else. Remember the empty case. It's very simple to forget that. We might want to have support for plus 2 plus 3 equals 6, and maybe want to look for like more than longer numbers, etc. But I'm actually just gonna do the 0 one and that one, and I'm gonna change the order because I do think that it's good to start with the empty case first. Okay, so already now I structured like, how do I want to scope this? What do I want to support? Multiple additions? No. Do I want to support larger numbers? Nah, I'm fine here. Okay, so test 0 plus. So the title here is pretty much, I think in this case, this probably makes the most sense. but it depends on how geeky we want to go. I just want to keep it in normal text because that's usually what you will do in most cases. So here you have expect 0. Actually, we need some kind of add method or function, sorry. 0, 0 to equal 0. And then I save it, and we can see here, cannot find name add. This is why I like TDD. The failure, the error here says what to do next, and then I will do the minimal required effort to get this to pass. Oh, and 1 and 2. So now I'm getting TypeScript errors here. Parameter n1 implicitly has an any type, so I need to add types, but I don't know TypeScript that well. Okay, here's what you can do. When you declare a constant here, or let, or whatever you want to do, you can say add. Then I create a type for add, n1 colon number, n2 colon number, and then that arrow number. Whoop. Okay, so now it's passing. I'm gonna show you the code, but the main thing is now it's passing, everything is fine and working. So I'm looking at the terminal to get feedback on the failures that will then tell me what to code next. Okay, so let's look closer at this. Oh, I should have zoomed in sooner. Sorry about that. So this style of writing the type, there are different styles. This is just to get you started with TypeScript. So you can basically always add it here. And then you see this one, you can actually call something else, but why make up more names when you don't need to? But here you have a type called add with uppercase A by convention. And then you just say the first argument is a number, second argument is a number, and it returns a number. And then you say that this function here has the type signature add. Now, if I do it like this, if I do it like that, then it will complain, saying that it can't really use this runtime function here because it's not written, it doesn't have a type for n3. And also, type string is not assignable to type number. It complains that add doesn't follow the type signature here. Okay, so we have the first meaningful test. Let me just check it in. Create first. And actually here, now I specified a bit more what kind of test. Create add function that returns 0. And for the second test, we're gonna implement this one here. And then, first of all, test. Adding, yeah, that's fine. 1 and 2. Expect add 1, 2 to equal 3. Yeah, that looks fine. Okay, so now if I look at the tests, I have a failure here. Expected 3, received 0. So if I change this to 3, it will failed the previous test. And one thing when working with TDD is that we want to focus on one test at a time. So I'm gonna do a refactor here and expect it to have the same failure. That's good. Now I'm gonna do an if statement here. If n1 equals 1, that's good enough. Return 3. This is gonna be super confusing for you. I'll explain why later on. So this is an extra step that people hate in the beginning, especially when you show something really simple like adding numbers, because again, we don't have any hard implementation, so I'm just going through the steps here. So in TDD, usually you create some kind of if statements where this test that starts on line 20 will only activate the code on line 10. And now I make it pass, and then that's a commit, pass second test adding 1, 2. Okay, so now when it's green, now I start to think about the real implementation that I want. So if I think about it, I actually want to check the numbers here. Return n1 plus n2. It still passes. Actually, let's take it side by side so you can see. Okay, so that still passes. Then I can remove the if statement and the return 0 at the bottom, and it still passes. Then I can trust it. Refactor, add function, implement, add function, and push that. And now we're done. So these extra steps, I don't think it's valuable for you to focus on formal TDD. You can just write the test first and write the implementation that you think that you need. Just know that you will usually see people using those extra if statements to focus on one test. So if you have the wrong implementation, you'll only fail one test, and you don't have to care about too much stuff at the same time. In this case, you usually just go directly from return 0, and then when you have the second test, you do n1 plus n2. Okay, but at least now you know that those if statements are heavily used and are a really great tool that you can use in more advanced use cases later on. Okay, so that's it for now, and you can find the source code at Marcus Radel and then lab-precourse-tdd if you need to look something up. And that is then. Whoop, good. And push. Oh, and by the way, that means there are 12 commits. So I'll go here, and we will have proof that we have done 13 contributions in my case today. So that I have been active coding in a meaningful way today. Okay, so keep on pushing the GitHub so you can show the effort that you spend during the pre-course, and then we'll continue to do that for the rest of your career. So you can see that you actually stay active coding, probably a bit more than me right now. So maybe something more like this or something. Okay, that's it. See you around.